Thanks, listeners, for joining us for Elko Live today. It is Tuesday in advance of the regular City Council meeting. So that means our guest today is from the City of Elko. And I'd like to welcome back Assistant City Manager Scott Wilkinson. Thanks so much for being here today, Scott. We'll look over today's agenda.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
And we do appreciate our city manager, Jan Baum. As I understand, she was pressed into service for the Elko Lions Club, and that's always a wonderful endeavor.
That's correct.
Yes. So nice to have representation there from the city. So the council agenda for today's meeting, 4 o'clock this afternoon at City Hall. They're at 1751 College Avenue, or of course you can follow along online. elkocitynv.gov will get you all the details, the agenda, and all the attachments that we're going to be looking at today. So first of all, there's always the consent agenda. The fire department is apparently going to embark on some exciting training, and they need permission to do that because they're going to use a really visible vacant building on the Moyle Highway. Is that right, Scott?
That's correct, and it seems like I saw them out there maybe last week or something like that. So yeah, that'll be important for them to further their training, and it's nice to have a building available to conduct that training.
So I believe it's the old Elko Vet Clinic.
Correct.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it'll be we'll say goodbye to an old piece of history and think about Doc Cuthbertson and when he built that building. That was pretty state of the art then. So
yeah.
Now
sure.
It's been replaced by something even cooler.
Yeah, it's a very nice facility that they have.
Yeah, so it was nice of them to, again, agree to allow this building to be basically demolished, as they often are in training. It's an important exercise.
Correct, yes.
So volunteers alike, I'm sure, as in addition to the firefighters, will be using that there at Colt Drive. So if you see that activity over the coming days, then you'll know what that's all about. Let's see. We want to look at what the council is going to be reviewing, possibly approving some of the descriptions for the classification and compensation study. And this took some time to get this completed, right, Scott?
It did. It was a pretty involved process. I can't remember the length of time, but we contracted with a consultant. They, of course, reached out to all the city staff to take a look at the existing job descriptions, propose, any changes, provide information back to the consultant and our HR department on the duties that they perform today. And so then the consultant took all of those considerations, into account, and also, looked at some different agencies, different cities throughout the community, and just did a comparison. And some jobs have been identified as needing updates with the job descriptions.
So that'll be discussed at council. And I'm sure that the study found, even though it's easy and tempting to compare Elko with other rural communities, maybe like Fernley or, some places like that, we have challenges when it comes to these compensation studies, right, Scott? Because not all these small communities have the variety that a municipality has. We have an airport and and all kinds of things.
Yeah, and that's correct. And we took a list of the communities that we would compare ourselves against, and that was approved by the city council.
So that's important to know as part of the process. Elko likes its government small and condensed. So anybody that works here should plan to wear several hats.
And that's true. And we have some positions that other communities just don't have at all, such as a landfill superintendent. Other communities don't operate a landfill under their banner, where we operate a regional landfill under the City of Elko banner. So there were some issues with even trying to do a job comparison with some of those unique positions that we have.
That's a good point, too, because our landfill is literally outstanding. We've won some regional or even national recognition for the way it's been operated in the past, right, Scott?
Yeah, it's a great facility.
We don't pollute.
Yeah, and it's really well managed. It's just an awesome facility, in my opinion.
So there's that consideration. And then with that, there's approval of the fire department positions. These positions that are, I guess, broken out and updated: the fire chief, the deputy fire chief, and the fire marshal. And those position descriptions should best reflect what their current duties are.
Correct. And we also have the city clerk technician 2, and the human resource coordinator and payroll technician are also being reviewed today.
All right. So if anybody's interested in any of those, there are attachments to the agenda. They'll be discussed publicly in the interest of transparency at this afternoon's meeting. And some presentations, which are always kind of fun, giving us a snapshot of what's going on in Elko. February is Beef Month, and sometimes you guys get hors d'oeuvres from the cattle women of Elko County.
Well, I don't remember us getting hors d'oeuvres.
Oh,
but
it didn't
I
get
think
to your level. Okay.
I think they drop off some beef, for the mayor. Typically, we see that.
That's nice.
Yeah. So nice steak or something like that.
Oh, good. Maybe Mayor Reese Keener shares or something. He'll have a barbecue or something. But we should mention the cattle women are very generous. They donate the beef every December for the Elko Senior Center.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so that's very nice. So do support them. They're going to give a presentation about heart-healthy beef and ways you can prepare beef. And I think you can even get it in Elko County now, which is nice.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yep,
Yes.
direct ranch to fork, I think. Jennifer Koopman is going to be on the agenda. This is important, Scott, and if you want to take some time to discuss it, because I know that throughout your career you have worked very closely with FISH, Friends and Service Helping, and they are on a bit of a precipice right now. Jennifer Koopman has stepped in as interim director of FISH, and she is not being compensated for this, by the way, and that was made public, not from her, but from another source who said she's not being paid to do this. And there was no wrongdoing at all with the previous director. She'd been doing it for about 9 years, but there are some serious financial challenges with FISH.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of that. So I worked closely with FISH, mainly with regard to our homeless camp. At one time, FISH used to manage, not necessarily the camp, but they would manage the registration for the camp. They would manage, the cases that they had at the camp. They would do welfare checks and things like that. And, at one point, their insurance company had some concerns with their staff and, potential exposure there. And so they had to pull back on that. And then I worked closely with FISH, when they were involved in providing a warming shelter during our cold weather period events. And then they had to pull back on that also. And so, that was unfortunate, and it's been a little bit of a difficult issue to deal with going forward because we don't have, the city being we just don't have that solid, reliable partner during cold weather emergencies and things like that. So everybody's just doing the best that they can.
Yeah, and that's likely to continue, although I know FISH is going to go out, and I'll be meeting with Jennifer. I'm going to be there on Thursday. We're planning a radio show, Scott. This is the time for people to step up and help churches. We used to have a ministerial alliance because there are so many needs. The needs have not changed. They have probably deepened since just what you're talking about. And there will likely be more needs going forward before things get better. Yeah,
and for me, I don't know everything that FISH does for the community. I have a fairly good idea, but a real eye-opener for me was I had a meeting scheduled with the prior director with FISH, and it was on a day that they provided food, to the community. And I was just astounded at the number of people that were in the queue to receive that benefit from FISH. And, for me, I was working with them on, mainly our homeless issue to the degree that the city's involved in that. But it was just an eye-opener to see the load that's on FISH. And, they're meeting that, or at the time they were meeting that, the needs of the community.
Yes, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. These are not just needy travelers. These aren't people searching for a bus ticket or a way out of town. These are our neighbors. These are residents, senior citizens, children. These are veterans. There are people in desperate need, and they cannot afford groceries, utilities, housing, all the things that many of us may not, be living in the lap of luxury, but, are proud to be able to say that we're providing. And so this is a chance for people to step up. The Samaritan House, which I guess they do continue to operate, Scott, I understand there are as many as 40 people living there. It is supervised, and there are families with children in the Samaritan House who would otherwise be living homeless. Yeah,
and that's just a great service that Fish provides. And like you say, it's a structured environment for people. And so, I've talked to some people that were at the camp that were able to, for the lack of a better way to describe it, clean up their act to where they could, participate in the service that they provide, that Fish provides at the Samaritan House. And, I haven't seen those people back at the camp. So I think it's been pretty successful for the few people that I'm aware of.
Okay. And there are obviously the people that you might encounter at the humanitarian camp, which is what Scott's referring to, which was literally, carved out as a camping space because we had folks camping out all over town. And some people would say, oh my gosh, someone's camping in my backyard, literally. I mean, there were some issues.
Yeah.
So this humanitarian camp may be the first stop for some people to getting help, or it may be simply a choice of a temporary camping space. But isn't it fair, Scott, to say that a lot of people do have addiction or mental health issues?
Yeah, I think that would be a fair statement, or both. And, I've seen just a variety of people pass through that facility down there. Some, that had some employment issues and needed a temporary place to stay while they continued to work, get enough money to move on to another location, things like that. But yeah, I think with kind of our core group, I would call it, we just see that drug addiction, and then of course there's some mental issues that I'm aware of, that probably from drug addiction that impact people. And we've had people down there that, I don't believe they did drugs, but they definitely just had some mental issues.
Scott Wilkinson is our assistant city manager, and of course among the presentations during today's city council meeting will be from Fish, the newly appointed director of Friends in Service helping Jennifer Koopman. Fish is located at 821 Water Street. They have a thrift store. You can drop off donations. They do appreciate financial contributions and ongoing gifts. That way they can serve people not only in the soup kitchen, but by distributing boxes of food. So,
correct.
All right. So that'll be an important presentation today, Scott. Thanks for giving us your view because, again, you have many, many years of experience in this.
Yes. Unfortunately, we have issues that we have to address.
Well, shifting gears to the next presentation, the City of Elko does very well by animals, stray animals, dogs, cats, puppies, and kittens at the City of Elko Animal Shelter. But it wasn't always that way, right, Scott? I mean, before we had some of these nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, and I think, just this kind of goes back to Curtis Calder taking a pretty keen interest in our animal shelter and the issues for the community at large, spay, neuter issues and things like that. And so, Curtis put a lot of effort and time into, addressing those more significant concerns. And they've just continued to, improve upon, all of that momentum. And it'll be an interesting presentation. One thing I noted in the presentation is that we've achieved a no-kill status at the animal shelter, and that doesn't mean we haven't euthanized some animals. I think we're at about 7%, so the status would be less than 10%. And so kudos to the current management with the city and at the animal shelter. Jan and Alyssa working together to continue to improve the circumstances across the community. And, our spay neuter, clinic really has a positive impact on reducing the number of animals across the community.
And you'll see that reflected in the statistics that will be presented. As Scott Wilkinson mentioned, the City of Elko Animal Shelter achieved a no-kill status as of 2024. And Alyssa Mangum has been on the program with Jan Baum. She'll make that presentation today. And she said, yes, it is difficult. Some pets have to be euthanized either because of terrible injury, maybe they have serious behavior issues. There are lots of reasons that not every single pet can be saved, certainly, or adopted. But she also credited animal shelter, veterinarians, the spay-neuter clinic just mentioned, all the local and out-of-area animal rescue groups, because they work very closely together. They have dedicated staff, volunteers, and, of course, the community that really steps up.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so that will be a great presentation directly following the one from fish, and hopefully we can do as well with fish as we have done with our animal shelter, with all the care and the community that we have, Scott.
That'd be great.
Wouldn't that be awesome? So, and then she'll give an overview, too, of what's to come in this year. They're looking at a trap, neuter, release program, which I believe has to do with feral cats.
Correct, and we've had at least one presentation that I can recall on that type of program, maybe a couple of them to the city council. So that'll be interesting to see how that might develop going forward.
Yeah, there'll be a presentation on hoarding situations, of which we have had serious issues with that as well within the city and the region. So, and that impacts the shelter, Scott.
It does.
So moving on, as we look over again, some of the most pressing agenda items. It's not a huge agenda, so you can see we're kind of taking our time with some things. We've heard from a couple of different sources that our U.S. Department of Energy Efficiency Conservation Grant might be in jeopardy because of the current national climate with funding, with grants and loans. Jan Baum talked about that at Government Affairs, the Chamber of Commerce meeting. It's about $75,750. We were hoping to use for new windows, right, at the golf course clubhouse?
Yeah, and it's my understanding today that grant's not in jeopardy.
Good.
But regardless, I think we're moving forward with that project. Whether the grant ends up being in jeopardy and we don't receive that funding, I think we're going to budget and try to move that project forward. That would take place probably next December when the golf course is shut down, timeline such as that. So we'll just see how that plays out going forward. But yeah, my understanding is that grant is not in jeopardy as of today.
That's great news. And that will save the city a lot of money and give greater flexibility in using the golf course clubhouse, which is really a nice restaurant and bar. And people have commented they like to, when we get snow, use the golf course for maybe cross-country skiing and then have a little warm-up inside or have special events at the clubhouse.
Correct. Yeah, that'd be great.
So that's just one of the many amenities that the city of Elko operates on behalf of the citizens. So then we're on to the Planning Commission, and this is an important part of city government. These are all volunteers, right, Scott? And was it your purview to supervise the planning department?
Well, yeah, Kathy and I work together, and then Kathy works closely with the Planning Commission.
Okay, and so they have outlined for the agenda for today's meeting, they present their annual report, so it talks about all their accomplishments. And they have some things in the works, right? They're looking at, say, a sign ordinance, which may not impact most people, but could impact some businesses?
Yeah, it could impact businesses, but I think more importantly, it has the potential to have a very positive impact on the community. So this is something that Kathy Laughlin, our city planner, has spent quite a bit of time on. And of course, we have, we're well-intentioned on trying to move it forward, and then we have some other issues that might come up throughout a year, and it becomes a lower priority. But Kathy has spent quite a bit of time at looking at other communities and what they do with their, sign regulations. And, Elko needs to update its sign regulations. They're pretty minimal, and they don't address electronic signs that we see today, the digital signs and things like that. So we need to try to move that forward. and, hopefully have a good outcome for the community.
And that would basically be uniformity as far as, where signs are placed, making sure that they're placed safely, that they're not impeding pedestrians on sidewalks, things like that.
Yeah, and we have very little of that in our code. So our code now regulates mainly the number of signs you can have on location, off location, the size of signage and things like that. But I think there's a lot more to take a look at that might ensure that we have, signage that, really benefits the community. I think we have to work on the digital signage. Some of them are so bright, they almost blind you at night if you're driving towards them, where others are not quite as bright. So we need to address some of that stuff and really keep up with technology.
All right, so that's just one of the many projects that the Planning Commission is working on. It's reflected in their work program as well as maybe some of their achievements for the most recent year.
Correct.
And then the city may be updating, or there will be an update, the Elko land inventory, which is always interesting too, Scott, and the whole inventory is included in the agenda packet. There are photos and everything, and I didn't print that out because there's quite a bit, but it really shows the kind of growth that the city's interested in and how I think interested the city is in working with property owners to benefit their property or their business.
Yeah, so a lot of the changes that we've had this year, we've had some land exchanges having to do with right-of-way acquisition, and so our land inventory needs to reflect that. Some of the changes had to do with, we have a lot of actual parcels within our street. Well, they weren't right-of-way, but you would think they were right-of-way, and so we had actual parcels, and they were listed, of course, on our land inventory, but they were located within a street alignment. And so we spent some time actually dedicating those as right-of-way. We dedicated them to ourselves for right-of-way, but that eliminates that parcel. And so we had some changes associated with that. And, we had the conveyance for the rec center and things like that. So you'll have these transactions over time. We've sold some pieces of property and things like that require an adjustment to our inventory.
So it's all online, elkocity.com, if you want to check it out and attach to today's agenda for the regular council meeting that opens at 4 o'clock today. We're visiting with Assistant City Manager Scott Wilkinson in advance of this afternoon's meeting. City's also going to look at the feasibility. The council may approve revising some of the fees charged for public records and especially geospatial information. It can get pretty pricey to research and then compile and then make copies, I guess, of the GIS information in particular.
Yeah, just maintaining the hardware required for that, the software, the labor that goes into maintaining the geospatial information. And then, we just did an update to our LiDAR. I think we spent about $62,000 on that. And we have some contours across the city. And so we're looking at adjustments to a cost per panel or a portion of panel for that. So we do some things like update the LiDAR. I think it's been about 10 years since we've done that. The city can utilize that, but then some of the design professionals can utilize the LiDAR and the contours for designing projects. Saves them a little bit on maybe having to hire a surveyor and some things like that.
So what's the type of software is what you're describing?
Well, it's actually, it's software involved, but we actually have to fly the community. So we hired a contractor or a consultant to fly the community and basically take imagery of the community, and then they overlay the contours, and we did 1-foot contours across the community. So it's pretty useful data for design professionals that might be working on a project. And I think it's been 2010 since we adjusted those fees.
All right, so that'll be up for discussion as well, and certainly probably not something that developers aren't used to paying. I mean, maybe locally, but yeah, as a benefit.
Yeah, some, I don't know that we get a lot of requests for, say, the LiDAR. We get a lot of requests for some of the other information. And then it used to be that it was pretty cumbersome to give some of this information out. So we had some fees associated with that. Now it's really, with technology, it's not that cumbersome to provide some of the information. So we're proposing some of the information for free.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so where we used to charge for that is for free. It just really doesn't take a significant amount of staff time to put that information together and email it out, where we used to have to go in and make copies of things, and we just don't do that anymore. So some fees have been adjusted up, others have been reduced down to free.
So that may come as a pleasant surprise. Thanks for the update, Scott.
Yeah, sure.
And let's see. Oh, this is something people ask about all the time. Oh, because I did see too in, I believe it was a Chamber of Commerce via the Elko Convention Center. So these are good sources that we're getting our Greyhound service back, which is amazing. There'll be stops in Elko.
New to me.
Yeah, okay. So we'll have to dig that out. I saw that. And then, but this has to do with the Elko train station. So some improvements. And I think too, again, with just the way things have been happening so quickly at the national level, people maybe have concerns about if Amtrak is secure, but the National Railroad Passenger Corporation is proposing some pretty significant improvements to our train station.
Yeah, and that would be on the north side of the rail. So they're looking at some pretty significant upgrades, mainly addressing any ADA compliance issues, and just really making all of that infrastructure fit. Necessitates them encroaching onto a city property that we have right between the roadway and the rail. And so it's a piece of ground that really doesn't provide any type of benefit to the city of Elko. It could really never be developed. And so I think it's a good use of the property. And of course, we're looking at granting them an easement so that they could construct that facility and encroach onto our property.
All right, that's what's on the agenda for today's city council meeting. And then under subdivision, which people do get excited about, more housing, the Zephyr Heights subdivision. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I believe that's 16 lots. So it's phase 2 of that subdivision. It's up off Jennings Way. And so we've seen a couple different subdivisions. Bergeron Village has finished up phase 1, phase 2 up off Jennings Way on the east side of our community. And then Zephyr Heights, several years back, did phase 1, and they're moving into phase 2. So it's good to see that the developer, the property, has justified the continued expense and moving forward with these projects.
So that subdivision, as you said, phase 2, people shouldn't expect to drive up there and see a bunch of houses. What they do see, though, are all the improvements in place in the lots, right? Can be curb gutter, sidewalk, road improvements, the infrastructure's there, and then someone could buy the lot to build a house.
Correct. And this developer typically does not build housing. They develop the lots, and then different builders will pick up the lots, build for clients, and then move the subdivision forward that way.
Okay. So you could contact any local realtor, I think, to find out about subdivision opportunities.
Sure.
And then remember, too, that some people will talk about, well, we need affordable housing, but I guess the reality, the way that it's been explained when I talk to realtors about it, is that it does free up more affordable housing when people, say, are able to sell a home or a family home in Elko's established neighborhoods and then move into something brand new. They pay higher taxes in that newer home. Obviously construction costs are more. So whether or not the value of their older home is also increased, it doesn't increase substantially. So what the realtors say is that makes those homes more affordable for first-time buyers.
Well, I'm not a realtor,
exactly.
So I would guess
we take their word for
correct.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and there is a wait list. We do understand, for people who are on fixed incomes. But I do want to mention that the Family Resource Center in Elko And Fish was doing it as well, but they may be a little short-staffed right now. But Family Resource Center does help people with applications, Scott. So if there's a senior citizen or someone with a disability or, any circumstance at all, new situation in family, whether a single parent needs housing, they can help you fill out the paperwork for that housing locally, because sometimes it's just too much for people when they look at the stack of paperwork and don't know where to start.
Yeah, that sounds like a good resource. And, we are seeing a variety of housing developed in Elko. We're seeing a lot of townhomes relative to what I've seen in the past. So we're seeing townhomes, less square footage in those, of course. And then we have one developer in particular who's developing smaller homes, and on smaller lots, of course. So we'll just see how all that plays out, too.
All right, Scott. Well, it has to feel pretty good to be part of that kind of future and growth, too.
Yeah, it's great to see that. We try to encourage a variety of housing opportunities through, all of our entitlement reviews and possible approvals with the city of Elko. We keep that in mind. It's in our master plan as an objective of our master plan. And so we see, we see the value in these type of entitlements.
Scott, thanks for being on the program. I hope we got through the agenda. I don't know if there was anything else as a public service you needed to add today, or?
No, I think that about covers it.
That does? Well, then I'll spring you to go to the meeting.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. Assistant City Manager Scott Wilkinson has been our guest here on Elko Live today. On behalf of the city, the council meeting opens at 4 o'clock at City Hall.